The champagne tasted like regret. Emma Chen stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror of the Mandarin Oriental, emerald silk clinging to her frame like a second skin. Outside, Manhattan's elites circled each other like sharks, their laughter sharp enough to cut glass. She had 72 hours to secure the Hartwell Foundation contract. $12 million. A partnership. Everything she'd sacrificed 7 years for. But she needed a date. Not just any date. Someone impressive enough to make Richard Hampton stop questioning whether a woman without a husband could handle the pressure of partnership. Her phone buzzed. The escort agency had confirmed. Marcus Hale. 6'3". Impeccable conversation skills. $5,000 for the evening. Emma's hands shook as she smoothed down her dress. This was business. Nothing more. She found him by the bar, exactly as promised. Tall, dark hair deliberately tousled, gray eyes that seemed to see straight through the carefully constructed armor she wore. He turned before she could speak, as if he'd been waiting. Emma Chen, he said, and her name sounded different in his mouth. Dangerous. You must be Marcus. For tonight, I'm whoever you need me to be. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Shall we? His hand found the small of her back, warm through the thin silk. Emma felt electricity shoot up her spine, unexpected and unwelcome. This was supposed to be simple, transactional. They moved through the crowd like they'd been doing this for years. He laughed at the right moments, asked intelligent questions about her work, played the role of devoted companion with surgical precision. But there was something underneath, something that made her pulse quicken every time their eyes met. You're good at this, she whispered, as they swayed on the dance floor, his hand steady against her waist. So are you. His breath was warm against her ear. Pretending. What makes you think I'm pretending? Because I recognize the mask. I wear the same one. Richard Hampton approached before she could respond, the entire Hartwell board trailing behind him like ducklings. Emma's stomach clenched, but Marcus's hand tightened reassuringly on her back. Emma, darling, introduce us to your companion. Marcus Hale, he said smoothly, extending his hand. Investment banking. I've heard impressive things about Emma's work with the Morrison Group. The lie rolled off his tongue like honey. Emma watched him charm the board members, deflect their probing questions, make her look like exactly the kind of woman who had her life perfectly assembled. The presentation went flawlessly. When the applause died down and handshakes were exchanged, Emma felt the familiar rush of victory. The contract was hers. You were magnificent, Marcus murmured as they retreated to a quiet corner. So were you. Emma turned to face him, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Something flickered across his face. Regret. Guilt. It vanished before she could name it. Emma, there's something you should know. Miss Chen? A woman with silver hair and razor-sharp eyes appeared beside them. Catherine Reed. I handle public relations for Sterling Industries. Emma's blood turned to ice. Sterling Industries, the corporation systematically devouring smaller marketing firms across the city. The company everyone whispered was planning a hostile takeover of Pinnacle Advertising. Mr. Sterling asked me to give you this. Catherine pressed a business card into Emma's hand. He said you'd understand. The woman disappeared. Emma stared at the card, then at Marcus, whose expression had gone carefully blank. Who is Mr. Sterling? She asked, though some part of her already knew. Marcus took the card from her trembling fingers and held it up to the light. His own phone number, written in elegant script. My real name, he said quietly, is David Sterling. The ballroom tilted. Emma's carefully constructed world cracked down the middle. You're the CEO of Sterling Industries. Yes. You're trying to destroy my company. Yes. Then why? Her voice broke. Why did you do this? David stepped closer, his gray eyes full of something she couldn't read. Couldn't afford to read? Because I needed to know if you were worth saving, he said. And now I know you are. He turned and walked away, leaving Emma standing in the wreckage of her perfect evening, the taste of champagne and betrayal bitter on her tongue. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The car is waiting outside. We need to talk. D. Emma looked at her reflection in a nearby window. Emerald dress, diamond pendant. The armor of a woman who'd fought for everything she had. She could go home, pretend this never happened, wait for Sterling Industries to make their move, or she could step into the car of the man who'd just shattered her world and find out exactly what game they were playing. The Mercedes idled outside like a predator. Emma walked toward it. The leather interior smelled like money and secrets. David sat in the far corner, tuxedo jacket discarded, looking more dangerous in shirt sleeves than most men did in full armor. City lights streaked across his face as the driver navigated through Manhattan traffic with practiced silence. "You lied to me," Emma said, her voice steadier than her hands. "I did. You paid an escort agency to arrange meeting me." "I did that too." Emma's nails dug into her palms. "Why?" David finally looked at her, and the intensity in his gray eyes made her breath catch. "Because I needed to see who you really were. Not the corporate warrior everyone talks about. The woman underneath. And what did you find? Someone as trapped as I am." The car descended into an underground garage, pulling into a space reserved for someone who owned the building. The elevator ride to the 47th floor passed in loaded silence, David's presence filling the small space until Emma felt like she was breathing him in. The penthouse office looked like it had been designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed Manhattan like a kingdom waiting to be conquered. Minimalist furniture, abstract art that probably cost more than her annual salary. David poured 2 glasses of scotch without asking if she wanted one. "Sterling Industries is planning to acquire Pinnacle," he said, handing her a glass. "The board votes in 2 weeks." "I know." Emma took a sip, letting the burn ground her. "And you wanted to meet the woman whose career you're about to destroy. I wanted to offer you a way out." "What kind of way out?" David set his glass down and moved to stand in front of the windows, his reflection ghostly in the glass. "Work for me, head of marketing for Sterling Industries. Triple your current salary. Full creative control," Emma laughed, sharp and bitter. "You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a future. Built on the corpse of my current company. Pinnacle is dying, Emma. Richard Hampton has been embezzling for 18 months. The Hartwell contract you just secured? It's the only thing keeping the doors open. In 6 months, maybe a year, it all collapses anyway." The scotch glass trembled in her hand. "You're lying." "I wish I were." David turned to face her. "I have the forensic accounting reports. I can show you." "Why would you show me?" "Because you deserve to know the truth before you make your choice." Emma set her glass down before she dropped it. "What choice? Come work for me. Help me build something that matters. Or stay at Pinnacle and go down with the ship when Hampton's fraud comes to light. Those aren't real choices. You're forcing my hand. I'm offering you survival." David moved closer, close enough that she could see the faint scar bisecting his eyebrow. "In this world, that's more than most people get." "Why me?" "You could hire anyone. Because you understand what it costs to claw your way to the top. Because you're brilliant and ruthless and you don't apologize for it." His voice dropped. "And because when I touched you tonight, you felt it too." Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. "Felt what?" "This." David's hand came up to cup her jaw, thumb brushing across her lower lip. "Tell me you didn't." She should step back. Should slap him. Should do anything except stand there drowning in gray eyes that promised both salvation and destruction. "I felt it," she whispered. David's mouth was inches from hers when her phone rang, shattering the moment. Emma jerked back, fumbling for her purse. Richard Hampton's name flashed on the screen. "Don't answer it," David said, but Emma was already pressing accept. "Richard?" "Emma, darling." His voice was slurred with expensive whiskey. "Wonderful work tonight. Simply wonderful. The Hartwells are thrilled. Thank you. There's just one small matter we need to discuss. Your companion this evening. Marcus Hale, was it?" Emma's blood turned cold. "Yes, funny thing. I couldn't find anyone by that name in investment banking. In fact, I couldn't find anyone by that name at all." Her eyes locked with David's. He'd gone perfectly still, watching her like a chess player waiting for his opponent's next move. "He's private sector," Emma said carefully. "Boutique firm." And how long have you two been seeing each other?" "Richard." "I don't see how that's relevant." "It's relevant because I just got a very interesting call from Catherine Reed at Sterling Industries. Seems she saw you with David Sterling tonight." The same David Sterling who's been circling Pinnacle like a vulture. Emma's world tilted again. She met David's eyes, saw the apology there, and understood. He'd wanted her to be seen with him. Wanted Richard to know. This wasn't about recruitment. It was about leverage. "You bastard," she breathed. Richard was still talking, but she couldn't hear him over the roaring in her ears. She ended the call and threw her phone onto the nearest chair. "You set me up. Emma, you paid to meet me so you could be seen with me. So Richard would panic. So Pinnacle would be vulnerable when you make your move. It's not that simple. Then explain it to me." Her voice cracked. "Explain how using me as bait in your corporate warfare is complicated." David ran a hand through his hair, the first crack in his controlled facade. "Richard Hampton is dangerous. The deeper I dug into Pinnacle's finances, the more I realized he'd do anything to cover his tracks. Including sacrificing you. So you sacrificed me first? I'm trying to protect you. By destroying my reputation? By making it look like I'm sleeping with the enemy? By giving you a reason to leave before he makes you the scapegoat for his crimes." The words hung between them like broken glass. Emma grabbed her purse, hands shaking with rage and something else she refused to name. "Stay away from me. Stay away from my company. And if you ever try to contact me again, I'll make sure every media outlet in this city knows exactly what kind of man you really are." She was halfway to the elevator when David's voice stopped her. "The forensic reports are on the table. Read them. Then decide who the real enemy is." Emma didn't look back. She couldn't. Because if she did, she might see something in his eyes that would make her want to stay. The elevator doors closed on his face. Her phone buzzed. A text from Richard. "My office. First thing tomorrow. We need to talk about your judgment." Another text. From David. "I'm sorry. For what it's worth, tonight was the most real thing I've felt in years." Emma deleted both messages and tried to pretend her hands weren't shaking. Tried to pretend she didn't want to go back upstairs and demand the truth. Tried to pretend she hadn't felt something dangerous and undeniable when David Sterling touched her. The lobby doors opened onto rain-slicked streets. Emma stepped out into the storm and wondered which would destroy her first. The man she worked for, or the one she couldn't stop thinking about. Emma didn't sleep. At 3 a.m., she sat at her kitchen counter with a glass of wine she wasn't drinking, staring at the manila envelope that had been delivered to her apartment. No return address, just her name in elegant script that made her chest tighten. Inside were the forensic reports, pages and pages of numbers that told a story of systematic theft, falsified documents, ghost employees. Richard Hampton had been bleeding Pinnacle dry for 18 months, and she'd been too focused on her own ambitions to notice. Her phone buzzed. David again. She'd ignored his calls for 3 days. "You read them?" Emma's fingers hovered over the keyboard. She should block him. Should take the reports to the board herself. Should do anything except what she was about to do. Yes. And? "Meet me, tomorrow, noon. The coffee shop on 53rd. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then I'll be there." The rain had stopped by morning, leaving the city washed clean and gleaming. Emma wore charcoal gray, armor without the pretense of celebration. When she walked into the coffee shop, David was already there, looking like he'd slept as little as she had. "Thank you for coming," he said as she slid into the booth across from him. "Don't thank me yet." Emma folded her hands on the table. "I need the truth. All of it." David's jaw tightened. "What do you want to know? Why you really went to that gala? Why you paid to meet me? And don't give me corporate strategy bullshit." He was quiet for a long moment, gray eyes searching her face. "My father built Sterling Industries from nothing. Worked himself to death at 53, left me an empire and a letter that said, 'Don't let the bastards win.' So I didn't. I acquired companies, restructured them, made billions. And I became exactly what I'd hated. What changed? 6 months ago, my sister overdosed. Pills and vodka in a hotel room because her husband, a venture capitalist everyone respected, had been systematically destroying her for years. Gaslighting her, isolating her, making her feel worthless. David's hands curled into fists. I'd been too busy building my empire to notice. Emma's breath caught. "She lived," David continued, voice rough, "barely. And when I started investigating her husband, I found connections to a network of executives using their power to abuse, manipulate, destroy. Richard Hampton's name kept appearing. Richard. He has a history. 4 assistants in 7 years, all young women, all left under mysterious circumstances. I started looking into Pinnacle, found the embezzlement, and then I found you. He met her eyes. The woman who'd worked for him for 7 years and somehow stayed untouchable. I needed to know how. Emma's coffee had gone cold. So you investigated me. I became obsessed with you. The admission seemed to cost him. The more I learned, the more I saw someone who'd built walls as high as mine. Someone who'd sacrificed everything to prove she was worth something. And I thought... He stopped, shook his head. I thought maybe if I could save you, I could save myself too. That's not salvation, David. That's projection. I know. His voice was barely a whisper. But by the time I realized that, it was too late. I'd already hired the agency, already set the plan in motion, and then I met you, and nothing went the way it was supposed to. What was supposed to happen? I was supposed to gather evidence. Confirm you were complicit or confirm you were a victim. Make you an offer and move on. David's hand reached across the table, stopping just short of touching hers. I wasn't supposed to feel like I'd finally met someone who understood what it cost to be me. Emma pulled her hand back. You still used me. Yes. You still destroyed my reputation. Yes. Then why should I trust anything you're saying? Because I'm giving you everything. David pulled out his phone, slid it across the table. Full access to Sterling Industries' acquisition plans. Proof of Richard's crimes. Evidence of his pattern of abuse. And the contact information for every woman he's hurt. Emma stared at the phone like it might explode. You could destroy me with this, David said. Leak it to the media. Use it to stop the acquisition. Burn down everything I've built. But if you do, Richard walks away clean, and the next woman who works for him won't be as strong as you. What are you asking me to do? Help me take him down. Not just fired, prosecuted, made an example of, and then decide if you want to work for me, work against me, or walk away from both of us. Emma picked up the phone, scrolled through files that represented David's entire strategy. She could end him, could save Pinnacle, save her career, save the life she'd built, or she could burn it all down and build something new. Richard called me into his office yesterday, she said quietly. Told me I was being considered for partnership, but my personal choices were concerning. Asked me if I understood the importance of discretion and loyalty. He's preparing to make you the scapegoat. I know. Emma met David's eyes. He kept touching my hand, telling me how important it was that we understand each other, how much he'd invested in my career. David's expression went cold and lethal. Did he? No, but only because I've learned how to deflect, how to laugh at the right moments and change the subject, and never, ever be alone with him, in a room with a locked door. The silence between them was heavy with shared understanding. 7 years, Emma whispered. I gave him 7 years and I was just another chess piece. You're not a chess piece. You're the queen, and it's time to take the king. Emma looked at David, really looked at him, saw the scars he tried to hide, the guilt that drove him, the desperate need to matter in a way that wasn't measured in billions. If we do this, she said, we do it my way. No more lies, no more manipulation. We're partners or we're nothing. Partners, David agreed, and whatever this is between us. She gestured at the space between them, electric with possibility. We deal with that after. Not before. After, he echoed. Emma stood, straightening her jacket like she was preparing for battle. First, I need to copy everything in his office. Every file, every document, every scrap of paper. Can you get me access to a secure server? Already done. Then we move fast, before he realizes what's happening. David stood too, and for a moment they just looked at each other across the table. Two people who'd learned to survive by never trusting anyone, choosing to trust each other anyway. Emma, David said as she turned to leave, after this is over, when there are no more secrets between us, ask me again why I paid to meet you. Why? Because I'd seen 100 photos of you, read 1,000 reports, but I needed to hear your laugh. Needed to see if your eyes really lit up when you talked about work you loved. Needed to know if the woman I'd fallen for from a distance was real. Emma's heart stuttered. And you're so much more than I imagined. She walked out before she could do something stupid like kiss him. Before she could forget that they were building a partnership on the ruins of everything she'd known. Before she could acknowledge that falling for David Sterling might be the most dangerous thing she'd ever done. Her phone buzzed as she reached the street. Richard, partnership meeting Friday. Dress to impress. We'll be celebrating? Emma smiled, sharp and cold. Richard Hampton had no idea what was coming. Neither did David. Because Emma Chen had spent 7 years learning how to play the game, and she was about to teach them both that she'd never been anyone's pawn. The evidence was airtight. Emma had spent 4 days copying files, recording conversations, building a case that would bury Richard Hampton. David had secured lawyers, contacted prosecutors, reached out to the other women. Everything was falling into place, which is why she should have known something was wrong. Friday arrived with unseasonable warmth. Emma dressed in navy blue, professional armor, and arrived at Pinnacle at 7 a.m. The partnership meeting was at 9. She had 2 hours to transfer, the last of the files to David's secure server. Before Richard realized what she'd done, her office felt different. Wrong. Emma couldn't place it until she noticed the frame on her desk. The photo of her and her mother at graduation was facing the wrong direction. Someone had been here. Her computer was already on. The login screen glowed, but when she entered her password, it didn't work. She tried again. Nothing. Looking for something? Emma spun. Richard stood in her doorway, perfectly groomed, perfectly calm. Behind him stood Catherine Reed from Sterling Industries, and 2 men Emma didn't recognize but whose security earpieces told her everything she needed to know. "Richard," she said carefully, "what's going on? That's what I'd like to know." He stepped into her office, closing the door behind him while the security stayed outside. "I got an interesting call yesterday from my attorney. Seems someone's been accessing confidential files, financial records, personnel files, even my private correspondence." Emma's mouth went dry. At first I thought it was corporate espionage. Sterling Industries trying to gather ammunition for their acquisition. Richard perched on the edge of her desk, too close. But then I checked the access logs. "Want to guess whose credentials were used?" "I can explain, I'm sure you can. You're very good at explaining things, Emma. Very good at making people believe you're something you're not." His smile was venomous. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice you getting close to David Sterling? Did you think I was stupid? I wasn't. You were sleeping with the enemy. Literally, I assume, though I don't need the tawdry details." Richard stood, straightening his tie. "The partnership board has been notified. They're very disappointed. Corporate espionage is a serious crime, Emma." Emma's heart hammered. "I was investigating you. The embezzlement, the falsified records, the women you've abused. Careful." His voice went cold. "Those are serious accusations. Do you have proof?" "Yes. Show me." Emma reached for her phone, but it was gone. So was her laptop bag. Her pulse spiked with panic. "Looking for these?" Catherine Reed entered, holding Emma's devices. "Mr. Hampton asked me to secure all company property pending the investigation." "You're working with him," Emma breathed. "But you work for David." "I work for whoever pays better." Catherine's smile was razor thin. "And Mr. Hampton made a very generous offer to provide evidence of Sterling Industries' illegal acquisition tactics. Seems Mr. Sterling has been using corporate espionage and blackmail to force smaller companies to sell. Very illegal. Very prosecutable." The room tilted. "That's not true, isn't it? How did you get access to those financial records, Emma? Did Mr. Sterling provide them? Did he coach you on what to look for? Did he promise you a future if you helped him destroy Pinnacle from the inside?" "No, because that's what the evidence shows. Communications between you and Mr. Sterling dating back 6 months. Financial transactions that look suspiciously like payments. And your credentials all over confidential files you had no business accessing." Emma's legs felt weak. "David wouldn't what? Use you?" Richard's laugh was ugly. "That's what men like David Sterling do, darling. They find ambitious women, promise them the world, and then sacrifice them when things get messy." "Did he tell you he'd make you head of marketing? That you'd be partners?" "He had. Word for word. The prosecutors will be here within the hour," Richard continued. "You'll be arrested for corporate espionage, theft of trade secrets, and conspiracy. Sterling Industries will face massive fines and probably criminal charges, and I'll be forced to testify about how I trusted you, mentored you, never suspected you were capable of such betrayal. You're the one who embezzled millions. Prove it." Richard spread his hands. "Without your devices, without access to company systems, with your credentials all over illegal file transfers, who do you think they'll believe? The CEO who built this company, or the woman who was caught sleeping with his competitor?" Emma's phone buzzed in Catherine's hand. A text message visible on the screen. "David, don't trust Catherine." Get out now, but it was too late. The security guards were already opening the door. "Wait," Emma said desperately. "Let me talk to David. 5 minutes. I need to understand." "Understand what?" Richard's voice was almost gentle. "That you were played? That he used your ambition against you? That's the oldest game in the world, Emma. I expected better from you." The guards moved closer, but Emma stood her ground. 7 years of surviving in this world had taught her to read people, to sense deception, to know when someone was lying. Richard was lying. But so was David. They both were. "You made a deal," she said slowly, pieces clicking together. "You and David. You'd let him acquire Pinnacle if he helped you get rid of me. I know too much about both of you. I'm the liability you both need gone." Richard's expression flickered. "Just for a second, but it was enough. That's insane, is it? David gets his acquisition without a fight. You get to retire rich instead of going to prison. And I get arrested for crimes you both committed." Emma's laugh was bitter. "It's actually brilliant. The ambitious woman brought down by her own ambition. A cautionary tale." Catherine's phone rang. She answered, listened, and her face went pale. "Mr. Hampton," she said carefully, "we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "David Sterling just walked into the FBI field office with 18 months of evidence documenting embezzlement and fraud at Pinnacle Advertising. He's naming you specifically, and he's got 4 women willing to testify about harassment." The color drained from Richard's face. "That wasn't the deal." "There was a deal," Emma whispered. Richard lunged for her, but the security guards grabbed him first. Within seconds, the office was full of actual FBI agents, not Richard's hired muscle. Emma Chen, a woman with a badge, approached. "I'm Special Agent Martinez. David Sterling said you'd have additional evidence?" Emma's hands were shaking. "I don't understand. He was supposed to. He turned himself in 2 hours ago, confessed to hiring you under false pretenses, manipulating you into gathering evidence. Everything. He's facing charges too, but he said you were working in good faith and that the evidence you gathered was legitimate." "Where is he?" "Being processed. He'll probably make bail by tonight, but the charges are serious." Emma sank into her chair as FBI agents began boxing up Richard's office across the hall. She'd been right. David had betrayed her, but he'd also saved her, sacrificed himself to make sure she wouldn't go down with them. Her phone, returned by an FBI agent, buzzed with a message. "David, I'm sorry. For all of it. But especially for this. I fell in love with you, and I still made the choice that would hurt you. That's who I am. That's who I'll always be. You deserve better." Emma stared at the message until her vision blurred. Agent Martinez touched her shoulder gently. "Miss Chen, we'll need your statement." "I know." Emma wiped her eyes and stood. "But first, I need to know something. David Sterling. The charges against him. How serious are they?" "Wire fraud. Corporate espionage. Could be 10 years if he's convicted. 10 years. For saving her. For choosing to do the right thing in the worst possible way." Emma pulled up her contacts, found a number she'd saved 4 days ago, the direct line David had given her for emergencies. "Who are you calling?" Martinez asked. "Someone who can prove David Sterling was working with my full knowledge and consent. Someone who can testify that everything he did, I helped plan." Emma pressed dial, her hand steady now. "His lawyer." "Ms. Chen, if you do that, you'll be implicating yourself. I know." The line rang once, twice. "But I'm done being anyone's pawn. And I'm done letting men sacrifice themselves to protect me." David had made his choice. Now Emma would make hers. Even if it meant burning everything down to save the man who'd tried to save her first. 6 months later, the courtroom smelled like old wood and broken promises. Emma sat in the witness box, navy suit pressed sharp as a blade, and met the prosecutor's eyes without flinching. She'd told this story 100 times. To lawyers, to FBI agents, to the media that had turned her into either a hero or a villain, depending on which channel you watched. "Ms. Chen," the prosecutor said, "let's be clear. You're testifying that David Sterling did not coerce you into gathering evidence against Richard Hampton? That's correct. And you willingly participated in what you knew to be corporate espionage?" "I participated in documenting crimes. There's a difference." A ripple of murmurs through the courtroom. The judge's gavel cracked like a gunshot. Emma's eyes found David in the defendant's chair. He looked thinner than he had that night at the Mandarin Oriental, the sharp edges of him worn down by 6 months of legal battles. When their eyes met, something passed between them. An apology, a thank you, a goodbye. "Ms. Chen," the prosecutor continued, "you had a promising career, a partnership within reach. Why throw it all away?" "Because he saved my sister," Emma wanted to say. "Because he turned himself in to protect me. Because when I had the choice between letting him take the fall alone or standing beside him in the wreckage, I finally understood what integrity actually costs." "Because it was the right thing to do," she said instead. The prosecutor's smile was thin. "Even if it meant destroying your own life?" "My life wasn't destroyed. It was rebuilt, better." After hours of testimony, Emma stepped down. She didn't look at David as she left the courtroom, couldn't afford to see what might be written on his face. Outside, the autumn air bit cold. Emma wrapped her coat tighter and descended the courthouse steps, ignoring the reporters shouting questions. She'd learned to walk through chaos like it wasn't there. "Emma," she turned. David stood at the top of the steps, his lawyer beside him looking irritated that his client had broken protocol. "You shouldn't be talking to me," Emma said. "I know." David descended slowly like he was approaching something fragile. "But the verdict comes in tomorrow, and I needed to say this before you go to prison? Before I lose the chance." He stopped 3 steps above her, gray eyes intense in the dying light. "You didn't have to testify for me. You could have walked away clean. You turned yourself in to protect me. You think I'd let you face this alone? I used you, Emma, lied to you, manipulated you into helping me. You gave me the truth when I asked for it. You gave me the choice to walk away, and you sacrificed yourself when you thought it would save me." Emma climbed 1 step, then another, until they were eye to eye. "That's not manipulation. That's love. Stupid, self-destructive, impossibly complicated love. But love." David's hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone like she was something precious. "I don't deserve you. Neither of us deserves the other. We're both too damaged, too ruthless, too willing to burn the world down to prove we're worth something." She covered his hand with hers. "But maybe that's exactly why we fit. If I go to prison, then I'll be here when you get out. That could be years. I waited 7 years to find someone who understood me. I can wait a few more." David kissed her then. There on the courthouse steps with cameras flashing and lawyers shouting objections, and the whole world watching them destroy each other and rebuild in the same breath. It tasted like hope and desperation, and the kind of love that poets write about because nothing else captures its violence. "Emma Chen," he murmured against her lips, "you're going to be the death of me. Or the saving of you." She smiled. "We'll see which comes first." The next day, Emma sat in the back of the courtroom and held her breath as the jury filed in. David stood straight as a soldier facing execution, not looking back to where she sat, not allowing himself the weakness of hope. On the charge of corporate espionage, we find the defendant not guilty. Emma's lungs burned. She hadn't realized she'd been holding her breath. On the charge of wire fraud, we find the defendant not guilty. David's shoulders dropped half an inch. His lawyer gripped his arm. "However," the judge continued, "on the charge of witness tampering and obstruction of justice, we find the defendant guilty." The courtroom erupted. Emma couldn't hear over the roaring in her ears as the judge sentenced David to 18 months in federal prison, eligible for parole in 12. Not 10 years, not the end. 18 months. Emma could survive 18 months. David turned then, found her in the crowd, and smiled. It was the first real smile she'd seen from him since that night at the gala. Relief and resignation, and something that looked almost like peace. They let her see him before they took him away. 5 minutes in a conference room with a guard at the door and lawyers hovering like vultures. 12 months, David said, taking her hands in his. If I keep my head down, follow the rules. You're terrible at following rules. Then I'll learn. He pressed a kiss to her knuckles. For you, I'll learn. Emma pulled an envelope from her purse. The FBI seized most of Sterling Industries' assets, but there were accounts they couldn't touch. Offshore trusts, legal loopholes. Your sister helped me find them. David stared at the papers. Emma, this is enough to rebuild. When you get out, we start over. New company. Clean slate. Equal partners. She met his eyes. If you want that, you'd wait for me? Risk everything on a man who lied to you? You're not that man anymore. And neither am I. Emma smiled. Sharp and beautiful and dangerous. We're the people we became when we chose each other over everything else. That's worth waiting for. David pulled her close, buried his face in her hair, and held on like she was the only solid thing in a tilting world. I love you, he whispered. I'm terrified of loving you, but I do. Good, Emma said against his chest, feeling his heartbeat strong and steady. Because I'm terrified too, and we're going to do it anyway. They took him away in handcuffs, but he looked back 3 times. Emma stood in that conference room until she couldn't hear his footsteps anymore, then pulled out her phone. She had 12 months to dismantle what was left of Sterling Industries and rebuild it into something that would make David proud. 12 months to prove that sometimes the best revenge is building something beautiful from the ashes of what tried to destroy you. Emma Chen had spent her whole life proving she was worth something to people who would never value her. Maybe it was time to prove it to herself instead. She walked out of the courthouse into winter sunlight, pulled her coat tight, and started planning. 12 months wasn't forever. It was just long enough to become the woman she'd always pretended to be. Strong enough to stand alone, brave enough to choose love anyway, and ruthless enough to burn down anyone who tried to take it away. 6 months later, Emma stood in an empty office building in downtown Manhattan, watching construction crews gut the interior. Beside her, David's sister Alexandra reviewed architectural plans with the designer. He'd love this, Alexandra said softly. Starting over, building something that matters. 6 more months, Emma replied, watching sunlight stream through floor-to-ceiling windows. You really think you two can make it work? After everything? Emma smiled. We're both too stubborn to fail, and too damaged to trust anyone else. Her phone buzzed. A letter from federal prison, scanned and forwarded by David's lawyer. Emma, they're letting me take business courses. I'm learning to code, building something clean, from scratch, the way I should have from the start. 6 more months feels like forever. But when I close my eyes, I see you in that emerald dress. And I remember why it's worth it. Love is the price of ambition, you said once. I think you were wrong. Love is what makes ambition matter. Yours, David. Emma read it twice, then saved it with the others. 47 letters in 6 months. Each one proof that some things were worth fighting for. She pulled out her phone and typed her response. David, the building is taking shape. Your sister thinks you'll hate the minimalist aesthetic. I told her you'll pretend to hate it, then secretly love it, because that's who you are. 6 more months, and then we build something that neither of us could have built alone. That's the real price of ambition, learning that you don't have to pay it by yourself. All my love, Emma. Outside, Manhattan glittered like a promise waiting to be kept. Emma Chen had spent 29 years clawing her way to the top. Now she was learning something more important. How to build a foundation strong enough to stand on together. How to trust someone with the sharp edges of herself. How to love without armor. In 6 months, David Sterling would walk out of prison into a world they'd rebuilt from wreckage. They'd stand in this empty building and make something beautiful from the ruins of everything they'd lost. And maybe, just maybe, they'd prove that some love stories don't end when the walls come down. They begin there. The end.